Welcome back to this month's update. As you can see, we have the trains rolling, so stay tuned and see the progress I got done. I finished the clouds on the backdrop. I did a couple different methods on those, so they're a little different than the ones on the right. Over here, I actually put those clouds in when the paint on the backdrop was wet, and I actually think the clouds turned out probably the best on that. Over here, I waited till the paint was dry, and then I came in with white paint, and I would maybe use a little bit of water to help dilute it a little bit, and I use the same technique over here around the sides. You can see I was sort of getting to the end and getting a little tired. I need to go back, I think, and fix this area up a little bit. And then this area over here, my only issue is that one cloud that turned out way too big, but maybe I'll paint over it at some point. But overall, it looks good. Next time, if I were to do this all over again, what I would do is I would have wet paint on the background and then I would have the blue paint of the backdrop, and then while it's still wet, stipple in the clouds like I did in this section. And I think this turned out the best, but I want to try out a bunch of different techniques, and it's how it goes. One of the things that I do know and I did remember was that you want small clouds on the bottom and then taller clouds and larger clouds up top, and that helps you force perspective if it looks like the horizon goes a long way. So along with the backdrop being completely finished, here on this portion, I've also outlined the lines for the track for the staging yard. I'm about ready to put that in. And what I did was, since I'm putting this directly onto the wood, I did the line of the outside part of the track as shown here, so that I can it's a little easier for me to line it up and I'm not leaning up overhead. So I did the whole length of the staging yard. It's roughly about 30 feet long, so I'll be able to get two 15-foot long trains on each track, 3 tracks. And starting tomorrow morning, I plan on doing that evolution and laying that track. So you can see I have some of my turnouts here that I'm going to use, and then I also drew the center line on the track for the main line. I still need to work on the lift gate, but for the most part it's there. I'll check back in with you guys tomorrow when hopefully some of this track is put in. Well, here is the result of a morning of work. I've been laying track down. What I've been using is Alex Plus caulk, and I've done a very, very thin layer on the staging yard to the point where I don't think some of it's going to fully stick, but that's all right, as I want to be able to use this track on the stage, and since it's not going to be scenic in any way, there's going to be a backdrop on it. But I have the 2 switch turnouts in, and then some re-railers, and I have the 3 tracks going along the long wall. And then when I get to the curves, I've only done the inside track at the moment. I've also done isolation sections, so I can have 2 different ones going on, 2 sections on each track for trains coming in, just so that I don't have all the engines running. And then on the far side of the wall there, I have all 3 of the tracks in. So if we go a little more closely, I have where the inside rail on each one of the staging yards is clipped with an insulator, so that I can turn power on and off separately. And then in the middle point there's gonna be another insulator, so it's gonna separate this into 6 different sections. Again, here I have some re-railers just in case anything does come off the track. And then I have it stops here, where then just one track goes around the curve. And that's how I'm gonna probably have to do it. So once this front track dries tomorrow, I will plan on going back and doing the second staging track. Until then, I am going to start working on the curve here and trying to at least get a loop going. Here's an update from the next morning. I was able to get the cork road bed in on the far side of the layout to get to the staging yard. I use the same technique, just putting Alex plus down and putting that to a very, very thin layer, almost to the point where you just looks like the plywood is wet. And then over on this side, I was able to take all the soup cans down after letting it dry overnight. One of the things that I did learn, and at least this is a test section, is that I did not put enough Alex plus down on a lot of these spots, and the track is still pretty loose. I'm okay with this on this one, especially for the straightaways, because the plan is to, again, reuse this track if I ever build another layout. I did make sure that I use more caulk as I went around the curves, just to ensure that everything did stick. But I think I'm starting to figure out exactly how much to put. When I read before, it was just the very thinnest line with a putty knife, and I realized that that was just not enough. I need to put a little more on there. But with that being done, next step is going to be to start soldering the feeder wires on each of the staging tracks, and then hooking everything up, and then also doing the rest of the staging yard. Here is the finished view after a couple weeks of work. As you can see, I have 2 trains on the staging tracks there, and overall super happy with the progress, but let's jump into it. Here I have the mainline track. This will continue to the mainline, but then back here is the staging lead. So I have the 2 turnouts in to get to my 3 staging tracks. I have all the wires hooked up to be able to power the tracks. And next up is going to be the tortoise switch machines, but they're right along the wall here. I'll cover them up with a small fake backdrop just to hide them, and then I have a couple re-railers put in at different points that will help re-rail if anything goes down. This piece of track right here where these bean cans are was a little bit too close to the middle track on the curve, so the auto racks would hit the intermodal cars, so I just redid that not too long ago. And then since this is a 180-degree staging yard, I put insulating sections on each spot here so to break it up into 6 different tracks that I can isolate and turn the power off, just so I don't have trains idling all the time. But then that goes all the way back around to the other side where we have the same 2 turnouts, and then leading to the mainline track that I still need to build. But again, I have all the tortoise switch machines. I plan on being able to control them with NCE MK2s and MK8s, and then also have push button toggles on my fascia here at some point. But all the wires see here is ran. I was able to label it, get my feeder wires and my suitcase connectors in. And then I started actually on the mainline track. So this is where this cork roadbed is, and it swings around to the bridge, which I'll come back to in a second. And then all the way back to this portion over here. So now coming back to the bridge, this is one of the more complex parts of what I've been building so far. I wanted to use the KISS principle, as I figured that would make it the easiest for me. So all it is a 1x3, two 1x3s vertically, and then one 1x3 horizontally. Super simple. It's about 39 inches long, so a little bit longer than I would like, but I wanted to be able to keep the door open when I'm not. And I tried to find a way to flip this door around, but it just wasn't worth my time. And it's super, and I can just take it off really easy there. Oop, if I don't hit that. And then just connecting it. I had to hold it. I just have some 1x3 that's screwed in on either side of me here. And then the other concern, obviously, is going to be to ensure that no locomotives roll off this if I'm not paying attention. So I have an insulating section over here, and then an insulating section right after this turnout that will cut the power off if the bridge is not in place. I used these micro switches just off of Amazon. See if I can get a better view of it. Yeah, micro switches off of Amazon that once the 1x3 goes down, it will connect the power from the track. This here is my bus line, and then this is the power going back to the track underneath. So you can see my wiring where that one skinnier line goes to that feeder cable over there. And then I still have to connect that last white outer wire to the bus line. And the same thing on this side, it's just obviously in the opposite direction because of the way it was mounted. The 1x3 connects the circuit and then powering it down the line. This way I have no concerns about any track or any locomotives going off the track. For power currently, I ran some 12 gauge wire to create a couple extra outlets underneath the island peninsula, and I have just my NCE Pro cab powered up on the layout there. I plan on purchasing this week an SB5, a couple EB1 circuit breakers that will all be right over here to control it, and then this switch turns the power on and off on the layout, which is super nice. So now if you head around, you can see this is the main bus line that swings underneath the peninsula, and then it joins up here to these terminal connectors that will go in either direction, powering the halves of the layout. And one thing I learned about terminal connectors, depending if you get 15 amp, 25 amp, there's actually different size screws and different width terminals that you have. So I found out that I had some 15 amp ones. These are 25 amp ones. And so there's 4, 6, 8, 10 for when it comes to connectors. So that is a learning curve, and I have to buy some new connectors off of Amazon. My next steps going into the month of December, obviously we talked about the tortoise switch machines for operating the staging yard, but I really would like to get the plywood down in the city of Barberton so I can work on the track work here, but then also into the PPG and Continental Carbon industry that's over here. And then the backdrops, we say I still need to figure out the height that I'm going to want them. I don't know if it's going to be just a 6, 8 inch backdrop. Obviously I have my heating and cooling unit, so I don't want to get it too high up there, and I still want to be able to reach in here in case of any potential derailments. But thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next month.